Welcome. I'm George Haraxon. I am the Reasons to Believe Scholar Department Director. I also get to serve as a Senior Adjunct Professor of Philosophy and Ethics. And I'm joined today by Dr. Miguel Endara, who is a philosopher and a bioethicist. And we're going to be talking about enhancement technologies and also whether or not we should be using these enhancement technologies. So, Miguel, thank you for joining us. We live in an unprecedented time where technology is advancing faster and faster, and so these ethical questions are being raised more and more. You talk about this in your classes, in your articles, and particularly, you talk about a bioethicist critique of human enhancement and the technologies that are coming. Just for those of us who don't know or understand the terms, what do you mean by human enhancement? And there's also this idea of biotherapies in that. Can you define those for us and give us a little insight into that?
Let's begin with therapy. Therapy is the idea that science and technology should be used to restore normal human functions. That is to be contrasted with enhancement, which is the idea had by those people called transhumanists, who believe that science and technology should not just restore normal human functioning, but it should go beyond it. It should transcend, it should help us transcend our limits, our normal human limits, mental limits, physical limits.
Now, humans have been dealing with technology for millennia, right? We use telescopes to extend our eyes, microscopes to see small things. We're not really referring to those kinds of technology. When you say, what are some examples of, well, what would be an example of a therapy that you're referring to, and what would be an example of a human enhancement that you're talking about here?
Right, yeah, thank you, George, for that question. CBS News reported a few years ago on a blind patient who was able to see using retinal prosthetic device, or a bionic eye. And this bionic eye was connected to a sensory device in his glasses. Now, before he was completely blind, once he had this technologically advanced bionic eye and glasses, he was able to see lights, and he would have to learn to interpret those lights to figure out what he was seeing. But I would say that qualifies as therapy because it's restoring normal human functioning. Yes, with the great aid of technology and science, but I don't see a problem with that. Now, this claim I just made is controversial. Not all Christians believe that there's no problem with this type of use of technology.
With the therapy?
But the way I'm using it, the way I'm defining it, the way I'm explaining it, yeah, it might be controversial.
I'm thinking of like, you can go on YouTube and watch a person who's had some of these therapies, like for instance, a person who is deaf and then they have implants and you see them hearing for the first time, or a kid hearing their mother's voice for the first time. And it's amazing. You can be brought to tears watching it. That seems to be more of the therapy, the restorative use of technologies. Right. Yeah. You refer to transhumanists. What are some of these enhancement technologies that sort of push on? We wonder whether or not they're ethical or justified in their use.
Yes. I'll give you an example of one such enhancement technology proposed by Ray Kurzweil. He's maybe the most famous transhumanist today. He says that by 1945, it'll be possible to create a happy marriage between the brain and artificial intelligence. And he envisions a day when our brain will be detached from our body. Our mind will continue to exist, and our mind will be connected to this artificial intelligence in the form of a network of robots, to be more specific, nanobots, robots that use nanotechnology. And using the brain or with thoughts, we could possibly create any type of body we want using this nanotechnology, using these robots. So that's an example of human beings transcending, going beyond their natural human limits, whereas in Kurzweil's vision, we no longer need a biological body.
Now that sounds like the stuff of science fiction.
And it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe this is what philosophers do. We think of these both thought experiments, and then technologists might think of this is how far I might be able to extend various aspects of the human person. What if I believe in the therapies, I look at that transhumanist view, and I might say, well, that looks a little science fiction-y. What if I'm just thinking about enhancements that help me think faster, read faster, these kinds of things? Do those raise issues for you too? Or do you think those are more fall in line with what we call therapies?
They fall in line more with what we call therapy. The real problem with enhancement. And the reason I believe that it's a problem, what I argue for in the article that was that I recently wrote, is that in order for human beings to flourish, we need to have what I'm calling human freedom, genuine human freedom. Now, freedom has been defined in different ways by different philosophers. I subscribe to the idea that genuine human freedom refers to the realization, the development of human potential, the capabilities that we have, and if we develop them in terms of the virtues, we could think of the virtues as classically understood, and we could think of any number of virtues. But if we develop our patterns, our habits of thought and feeling and action in excellent ways, virtue comes from the Greek, and it means the Greek word arete, and that means excellence. If we develop our natural human capacities in excellent ways, then we will be virtuous. Now, the problem is that if we push through the limits of our limitations, these virtues that we have used to help develop our humanity and to help us flourish as human beings, these virtues will no longer line up with our humanity. So now we will have to rewrite the script of what it means to be virtuous. But the question is, even if we write the script, will we attain all we want out of life? Will we attain satisfaction? And I'm very doubtful that we will. If the virtues point towards happiness, point towards fulfillment, what will point towards that if the biotechnological futuristic world that Kurzweil and others envision comes to pass?
So I'm hearing you say that we have a range of capacities, and those capacities, like I think you've mentioned before, like playing piano, right? I have the freedom to come up. I'm a drummer, and people love to come up and say, "Can I try the drums?" Right? Mm-hmm. And I can give them the freedom to sit on the drums and play it. But if they're not a drummer, they haven't practiced, they haven't developed the skill, as you refer to,
right.
They won't be able to they can hit the drums, but they can't play them. They have to develop the skill to do that. So they're really not free to play the drums, even though I've given them access. Right. So they have access, but they don't have freedom. Yes. I think you're talking about there are certain potentials that we have that as we develop them, we become more free to be who we are. Is that correct?
That's right, who we are. We are human beings created in God's image and likeness. But I like your analogy, which is close to the analogy that I use in my article, that of playing piano. Because if we're next to a drum set and we have two sticks, is it true freedom just to be able to hit the drums in any way we want at any time? I think that'll only cause auditory anarchy. It won't.
Auditory anarchy. I love that. That's going to be the name of my next band. Auditory, I think that's great.
However, if we learn to to hit the drums in a certain sequence,
Skillful way, yeah.
skillfully, musically. If we train ourselves to do that through determination, through hard work, through gaining these, you could call them virtues, of studying musical notes, right? Gaining musical memory. If we know how to do that, we will have gained certain, you could say, virtues, right? Competent use of musical memory, determination, work ethic. And these are the kind of things, according to virtue ethicists, that lead to our flourishing. Because whether we're playing piano or playing the drums, we are satisfying a basic human need, which in this case is the aesthetic need. There is a natural human need to seek after, to experience, to create beautiful things. Yeah. The search for beauty, what Socrates talked about long ago, truth and goodness and beauty. But this is something innate within us. Now imagine that the type of future that Kurzweil envisions comes to pass, and our body is a set of nanobots or something like that. All we have to do is program our body to play a piano tune or to play a tune on the drums. Will we gain as much satisfaction in doing that? Or not? Think of the comparison between somebody who is well trained, well versed in playing the drums and could play beautiful music on the drums, versus turning on our iPad and playing a tune on the iPad. Do we derive as much pleasure, satisfaction from playing the tune on an iPad, or from actually playing the drums because we have worked hard and we have been trained in correct musical technique?
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say therapies are restorative and good, bring us to what we're lacking, kind of restore us. There's ways to to realize our capacities, our capacity to create beauty, to think well, all sorts of things, to connect with God.
Yes.
But there may be a boundary where we hit certain human enhancements that actually dehumanize us at some point. And
that
this is a warning that we're having to think about, and with technologies coming forward. So thank you again, Miguel, we need people thinking in these areas, and sometimes that might be weird to think of these science fiction realities, but some of them are becoming a reality along the way. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, George.